In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
A big welcome to our viewers tonight. I'd like to begin by asking you something very important. How much do you want the love of God and God's love and peace with you? 2 Corinthians 13:11 promises that when we aim for restoration, when we comfort one another, when we agree with one another, when we live in peace, the God of love and peace will be with us. In fact, in John 17:11 through 23, before Jesus died, he prayed that the level of oneness that we have amongst ourselves would be a reflection of the beautiful oneness shared between the Heavenly Father and himself, so that our oneness would be an indispensable tool for showing the love of Christ to the world. God's vision for us, according to Philippians 1:27, is that we would be of one mind, striving side by side for the faith of the gospel. In fact, Matthew 5:9 says, peacemakers are blessed and are privileged to be called sons of God. So that's what we're after tonight. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Ila and Alison. How are you guys?
Hi, great.
Great.
Good.
Doing great.
Great. So when I was trying to decide what subject I wanted us to kind of discuss, I was kind of thinking about it, and I was on Facebook, and oh my goodness, people are crazy sometimes. Just talk about conflict, not just there, but then, you know, as a vocal coach, I have to deal with divas and stage moms and oh my goodness, conflict. And then we have to talk and, you know, how do you deal with that? And it's funny because we have lots of ideas about it, but I don't think most people realize God actually tells us how to resolve conflict. Mm-hmm. And it's a little stressful, but it's the way that God has asked us to do. And tonight, that's what I want to study. I want to study on resolving conflict. How are we going to do that? How, as Christians, do we take what God has taught us and do that? So what I want to do is start off first talking about some Bible verses that get our heart right and talk about living in peace with others. Miss Ila or Miss Cindy, do you guys have anything on that?
The passage that really comes to mind for me is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 15 that tells us that see that no one repays anyone evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to everyone. And that helps me to remember that in a conflict that I might have with another person, whether it's at work or socially or in the church, that I need to be sure that I'm not trying to be repaying evil for evil. If they're mean to me, I need to be sure that I'm being godly back toward them.
And that's it. It's easy to say, it's not easy to do.
Right.
Right. I have Romans 12:18. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. And that's not straighten every single person out, not, you know, get everybody on they have to agree with you. That's not what it's saying there. Then if we go to Matthew 5:41, it talks about going the extra mile. This is how our heart needs to be set before we go into this mindset of conflict. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them too. See, this is where your heart needs to be. And then Philippians 2:3-8. This is a little bit of a longer one. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each one of you not only look to his own interest, but to the interest of others. Having this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Jesus Christ, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equally with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself. See, we're talking about Jesus, who left heaven and came down to earth. Talk about the humility of that. Mm-hmm. He was spat upon, he was cursed, he was crucified, he opened not his mouth. What a great example. Let me just tell you, I mean, if you don't know me well, you have to know opening not my mouth is a huge effort on my part. I like to do that. But he humbled himself. That's the example that we need to look at. Okay, so let's go on to what are some Bible verses that show us when our heart may not be in the right place. If we're going to a conflict and somebody has hurt you, how do you get your heart right? How do you find out maybe it's not in the right place? Do either one of you have a verse on that?
No, I don't. Just go ahead.
I would add, and this might fit more with your previous question, that often peace is a result of putting on love. And Colossians 3:14 says, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. I think about Ephesians 2:14 and Galatians 3:28, where it talked about that, I mean, we learn there that the racial, the socioeconomic, and all the other barriers are beautifully broken down by Christ in the church. I mean, all are supposed to be family to us. And just makes me wonder, maybe the reason why there's so much division in the world at present is because the world is attempting to have unity with one another while they're rejecting Christ in the church. I mean, God is the God of peace, and a key component to peace with one another, I think, is God. But yeah, Alison, what did you have in mind on Bible verses, like things that show us when our heart isn't right? What did you have in mind on that?
First of all, that was a really good point. I loved that. But Matthew 23:24 and 25, when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, he says, you blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. And sometimes the outside of our cup looks really good, but the inside, it's tearing other people down. It's you did this wrong, or you hurt me, or my business. I have it's an all-girl singing group, and girls are mean sometimes. You know, not all of them, but girls can be mean. Yeah, and it's that little swiping, and you know, that kind of thing. It's like, you know, you got to get your heart right, because that's where you can pretend like, oh no, I was just standing here quietly minded. Right. Yeah. So, but the one thing that I think I need to remember is 2 Timothy 2:24 through 26, especially if I'm dealing with somebody who's weaker in the faith than I am, or, you know, just somebody who may not have been raised in the church. This says, and the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil. That patiently enduring evil, I was like, whoa, I didn't know. Being patient, like they're not going to be on your level, or they're not going to be there on their first day if they're a new Christian. If something, you know, is anyway, then let me go on to 25. Correcting his opponents with gentleness. God may perhaps grant them repentance, leading to knowledge of the truth, and they may come to their senses. And so you can bring this person back, but how many of you have been convinced that you were wrong by somebody screaming at you and calling you a scumbag?
Yeah.
Never happens.
Agree.
Yes. And what is your intent? Is your intent to win this person over? So this is where we get into the meat of this conversation, and what methods of resolving conflict are effective and what methods are ineffective. So let's just throw out some ideas of what are ineffective ways of resolving conflict.
Probably not humiliation.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So we want the other person to save face. So that's one objective, is that we want to approach them in such a way where there is a minimal loss of dignity. And a lot of times that might involve our saying, like, I have this weakness and that other weakness, like I have some ideas I'd like to share with you that might be beneficial if you're open to a conversation, or even just, asking something that is encouraging to them to be forthright about the thing that you're concerned about. So that's one.
Yes.
One
Miss
of the
Ila, did you
things
have something?
One of the things that's so ineffective is when somebody is upset or angry, is to match that anger or
Okay.
that same level of upset. That just escalates. It never goes down, unless one person just stops. I'm reminded of Proverbs 15 and verse 1 that tells us a soft answer turns away wrath. And so often, a harsh word, it says, stirs up anger. And so often, if you can match that anger with kindness and quietness and just tell me what you're thinking, and give them a moment to help to calm down. But to come right back at them with, that doesn't always do it. But
Yes.
and I think one expression that helps me that I heard is to ask yourself, do you want to fix the problem or do you want to fix the blame?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get caught up in that. And that you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you back. It's tough. And then sometimes you just want to satisfy your ego and you continue to put somebody down. And if it's me, that's not effective. You have to ask yourself, is my intent truly to repair my relationship, to fix this conflict, to win over my brother or sister? Is that? So let's talk about effective ways of resolving conflict. What kind of things? And if you're, I'm going to say, please feel free to leave comments. I would love to see what are some effective ways of resolving conflict.
Definitely.
So do you guys have something on that? What are effective ways?
I think one thing is to ask yourself, what outcome do you desire?
Mm-hmm.
As a Christian, our outcome that we desire should be a repaired relationship with another Christian. It shouldn't be that I'm right and they're wrong, or that they see that they're wrong. It should be the relationship with God and with another Christian is right.
I think with women, we have a really hard time not reacting from an emotional level. And so I guess I'd like to say something to the heart of this, because you've got to kind of get your heart right to be able to make sure to say something back to them that's beneficial and not retaliation, like you said. And so if we want to react to those that were in conflict with the way that Jesus did, when he said, like during the crucifixion, he's forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. So I have found sometimes in order to soften our hearts towards our offenders, we need to look past what the person has said and ask, why might they be saying it? I mean, in a lot of cases, especially presently, they're saying it because they're deceived. I mean, that's sad. Or perhaps they've made an assumption. I mean, we have all done that. Like we've deduced a little too quickly at times. So that's relatable. That can help soften my heart toward them. Sometimes our attackers are insecure, or sometimes envy will cause someone to want to hurt the other one that they're envying. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's sadness and grief. The trick is when we respond to hate with love and more mercy than our accusers deserve, then we will not we'll not only obtain the blessing of God, but the ones that are accusing us might feel some remorse if we respond like with more grace than what is expected. Right. We want them to be convicted on their own, to be like, sorry, I shouldn't have said it that, and then we can de-escalate is what we're aiming for, right?
With kindness and giving them a gracious way out, to not hedge them in and anything other than I was totally wrong, you were right. Then your intent is your ego and not truly relationship repair.
Right.
Right.
So when there's conflict, we have two options.
Okay.
To let it go or confront this person. So let's talk about when it's time to let it go.
Alison, could I go back to what we were talking about, an effective method of dealing? Because, and I think maybe you're going to come to this later when we approach somebody. Maybe I should hold it until then.
You can do it whenever you want, Ms.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say that I have found oftentimes someone who's upset or has something they want to talk to me about, they want to be sure to be heard. They don't always necessarily want me to just apologize abjectly. They just want to be sure I know what they're thinking and how they're feeling.
Yes.
One thing that I learned was that and it's a body language thing too, is I always square my shoulders directly toward that person so that everything they have to say is coming right at me. I'm never turned away as though I'm ignoring them. It's always squared around. And I always try to keep my hands and arms open.
Not so cross your arms.
I'm not, up against it or fighting against it, but I'm openly hearing what they want to say. And sometimes just that body language eases things because you're showing yourself to be open to them.
Yes.
Yes. I feel like I should be taking notes on what you just said. Body language is very important. I agree 100%. But okay, let's back up to when is it time to just let it go? And I'm just going to tell my story. I had an issue with someone. I was planning my husband's 50th birthday party, and I had bought all this stuff and we were doing all this, and I was calling people saying we're going to have it on his birthday. And this one person said, oh, we were going to have my daughter's birthday party on that day. And I was a little annoyed because my husband's birthday is in December and her birthday was in October. Okay. Like, it was 2 months ago. It's too late. You can't have it. I rose above and I was like, fine. It's okay. We'll do it I'll call everybody back. It's fine.
Wow.
So I didn't have the best attitude in the world about it, but I did, in my head, I was rising above. So right before somebody was spending the night or staying with us. So I called to say, hey, tomorrow night for the party, we've got one extra person. Is it okay if we bring him? And she said, oh, we canceled that.
Oh.
And I said, okay. And then I hung up the phone, and y'all, I am glad there was no video on me because I did not behave very nicely. It was, I just picture me in my kitchen and I am just slamming around. I cannot believe that. I was just so angry with this person. It wasn't pleasant. Anyway, so I had just been to a ladies' weekend and Sheridan Dobbs had done this talk on memorization. And I was like, I'm just going to memorize a verse and it's going to be fine. I'm not going to be mad anymore. And so I turned to Ephesians 4:31 and 32. And let me tell you, girls, it has come in very handy for me. But I started off and I just did it in segments. And it says, let all bitterness, wrath, and anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you along with all malice. Okay, so you just picture me in my kitchen and I'm walking around. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to put it away. I'm just going to put it away. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm just going to put it away. And so I keep going. Okay. And I did put it away, but it was kind of in one of those closets that, like, when you open it, it can all come back out, in case you need it later, because she might do something else, and then you're going to need all that stuff.
Right.
So let all bitterness, wrath, and anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you, all the malice. Then I was like, okay, and then the next part, and be kind. And I literally slammed my hand down on my kitchen table and said, I have got to be kind to her. And like, my heart was just totally messed up. And then it says tenderhearted. That just took the wind right out of my sails, because I knew I wasn't being kind, and I certainly was not being tenderhearted. I was actually being the opposite. I was being hard-hearted. And then it says, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ also forgave you. And it was like, oh yeah, all that stuff. And it was when you realize the debt that you owe,
yes.
you're not so harsh and judgmental on other, because honestly, on that day of judgment, I want all the grace and mercy that I can
Girl,
get.
Oh yeah.
all of it. All of it.
And if I'm not given it, it's just foolish. Okay, so the part of the story that I left out is this friend had 5 children, and her husband was starting a new business. And I mean, good night. I don't have 5 kids, and I'm no, thank you. God bless every single one of you have that many kids. I think it would just made me crazy. But I would be having birthday parties in December when their birthday was in October all the time. And I just wasn't being the person that I needed to be. And so I decided to let that one go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it should have been let go. It was petty. And it's funny how women, we get that little, and it's like, I'm sorry to tell you that I do that sometimes.
The thing I love about your story is it's forgiveness. And then there's the act of goodwill of being kind. And then your point, I never noticed how that verse sort of builds on that, because it's one thing like to be kind. It's other thing to feel kind. So then it's like tenderhearted and tenderhearted. So I love the progression
just
of
closing loopholes, closing loopholes. Like, oh, but I can be hard. No, you can't. He doesn't let you get away with it.
And you ask, when is it time to let it go? And that's definitely a situation, because confrontation would not have been to the glory of God.
No.
And
it would have been petty.
Yeah. And if a confrontation is necessary for righteousness' sake, because this person is sinning, then you can't just let that go. But quite often we can resolve that in our own minds. Especially somebody will make some offhand remark or not speak or turn, and we can confront every one of those, but that's not going to help your relationship with Christians at all.
And what I came to the conclusion of is that wasn't a her problem. That was a me problem.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from that. And I'm so glad that, but it's like, you got to, because I think as women, like when we get hurt, we tell the story in our head, and then again, and with each revolution, it just gets big. I mean, okay, I'm dramatic. I know that. Okay. You guys may not be as dramatic as me, but the story just gets bigger and bigger. And I'm like, boy, you got to get a hold of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's, you've left. The thing is, the scripture, what God says, no matter how crazy I'm spinning out, I know that is right. And it grounds me back. And like I said, it just started closing up those loopholes for me.
Yeah. And what I tend to do is I tend to build a case. That's what my head does. And the thing that's bad about like gathering evidence, see how this is, see how offensive this is, not only this, but that, not only that, but this. The problem with that kind of mental habit is that you find what you're looking for. What you're gonna notice is more evidence. You're not gonna notice what you need to notice. And that what you need to notice is exactly what you just pointed out. What do I owe God in this? Because the thing is, you guys, God is watching every single one of these interactions we have with everyone. And he is deciding whether or not you are responding in the way that shows that you have the fruits of the Spirit. That's the way that Jesus responded, like your introductory verses there. So God is watching always. And so let's be careful, little mouth, what we say, right? And heart, what we think. And because we're being judged for every idle word that proceeds from our mouth, which comes from our heart. So good thoughts today, Alison. What else?
Another thought, Alison, I had was that sometimes if you're dealing with, and hopefully not a Christian, but a toxic person, a manipulator, a verbal abuser, that person is not one for you to confront, because it's only going to make you feel worse. This is not the kind of person who's wanting to resolve a problem, who's wanting, to have that relationship. And that's, even though they're wrong, a confrontation it may not work well for you. That may be a time when you just need to let it go for your own mental health and for your relationship with God.
That's good advice. So let's talk about when it's time to go in. Okay. When you need to confront them. So what are some situations, or when is it that you need to have a little chat with someone?
Okay.
Like Ila said, I think, when their soul is in danger, when someone else's soul is in danger, really the rest of it, we need to get over ourselves. In a lot of cases, a lot of things we need to get over ourselves and make peace in our own minds, independently of a confrontation. But if someone's in danger, especially spiritually.
And I do feel like if there's been a confrontation or something has happened and you go to your friend and you tell them, do you know what she did? Mm-hmm. You're not being fair to that person, because you're not giving them the chance to defend themselves or make it right. And Matthew 18:15 says, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. So the responsibility with this, for this resolution, does not lie with the offender.
Mm-hmm.
It is the offended. The responsibility for all of this is on the person who is offended. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit, because usually, she didn't apologize to me. She didn't. I don't get that out of this.
Uh-huh.
Now, Matthew, this goes on to talk about, if that doesn't work, then you do this. If that doesn't work. But I feel like this first step is the one that I want to focus on tonight, is going to your brother. And let's talk about that.
Okay.
When someone hurts you, or there's something, and I'm saying this mostly for myself, don't just blurt out the first thing that comes out of your mouth. I have all these people who always say, 10 minutes later, I wish I had said this and this and this. And I was like, that is not my problem. My problem is it all comes out. And then I want that one and that one and that one back.
Yeah.
You wound people. And it's so to know that if there's a conflict or you're injured or any of this is going on, the first thing you need to do is probably hush. And then pray about it. Pray for wisdom. And one thing that has helped me is to pray that you see this person like God sees them. Because that takes all your baggage and stuff out of it. And to see this person who God loves. God adores this person and wants them restored just like you. And it just to remember to pray for that and the wisdom and the words. And sometimes I have gone in to talk to somebody and I have said something very different than what I had initially said. And I was like, whoa, good thing I prayed about that, because God just sort of took over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so don't blurt out. Okay, so hush. And then pray. And then the third one is go to them. And this is what God says to do. And oh my goodness, I just took a nervous breath because I'm having anxiety even saying it. And I think this is where we really mess up, because we don't want to do it. We don't want to go to them. We don't like confrontation. It's scary. I mean, I was just saying it and I was like, oh,
I know.
But this is what God says to do.
Yeah.
So you need to go to them, and when you don't, and I guess I can't speak for men. I think for women, it builds up this bitterness. And, every time they say something, it's like, I put that stuff away in the closet so I could use it. Every time they say something, I remember it.
I remember that. Yeah.
You need to get it over with. You need to go to them and give them the opportunity to either defend themselves, because quite honestly, I don't know everything. Okay. I know that's
Right.
shocking to most people, but there may be things that you're missing.
Yeah.
So, and I would say, and I would like some advice from people, if you want to add in the chat, from both of you, how to start this conversation, how to start this. One thing that I will do is, I know I have to do it. So I will text them and say, hey, I need to talk to you. When is a good time? And then you have initiated the launch sequence.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
true. That's
good.
And it's like, okay, I've ripped the Band-Aid off and I know it's going to happen, because if somebody texts me that, I'm going to call them right away and be like, what is going on?
I know, because if I get that text, I need to have this I can't have that cloud hanging over me. Like,
right.
I need to talk about it now.
Right.
Yeah.
So that makes me do it.
Yeah.
And then I just want to say, I think one of the ways that I have done this is to say, are you okay? Because, and maybe even add something like, you don't normally act like this. Something like that. But please, I think we need all the advice we can get on how to initiate this conversation. What do you guys have?
Well, I jotted down a few ideas. I mean, but I only jotted them down because, I mean, I don't know if I can top that. Are you okay? Because that says, it appears to me that you may be in danger. So yeah, I need to know that you're all right. Even if you're not all right, I'm here to help you be all right if you want that. So that would be one way. Another, depending on your relationship, like, you know how much I love you, right? The thing is, you are too important for me to turn a blind eye. And it's really hard to say this, but I've been a little scared for you lately. So that's another approach. Maybe ask if they wouldn't mind if you ask them some questions to get clarification. Because sometimes, you guys, we have concerns. And then once we just ask some questions, we're like, oh, I totally misread what I thought I saw. Right. And you kind of want to tiptoe in like that, because you may be way off base. And if you jump in with both feet, that really
backing out of that's not pleasant.
Yeah, that hurts them, that you thought they could be in that much trouble. So tiptoe in here and figure out really what's going on. You may have made an assumption. Yeah, sometimes humor is okay, you guys, depending on the situation. Maybe it's not a big thing. Allison, I think I've even said in our text to you, like, pretend this isn't the most awkward question ever. And then just like, okay, are we on the same page here? Oh, we are. Oh, super. Okay. So sometimes you just like saying, yeah, there's an elephant in the room. Isn't it awkward? Listen, I
feel like that is, so to just say, look, I'm actually really nervous about this. Like, I hope that you can see that my heart is in the right place. And I'm really worried that my words are just going to mess things up, but I hope that you can hear. And when you're just transparent and honest about it, look, this is upsetting me, or I've seen this or whatever, but to understand that we are both sinners. We are both, and to also put this in, okay, when it's my turn for somebody to come to me, how do I want that? So anything else? Do you have anything else for helping initiate this conversation?
I think the more, if somebody has sinned, has done something, or they've obviously said something, I think if you've misread a situation, that's a whole nother thing. But if you obviously have not, or if you feel real certain, be specific about what it is. Not like, well, you hurt my feelings. Well, in other words, when I said and you said, then my feelings were hurt. Was that what you intended? And could we talk about that? I think, or as you earlier had said, clarify the situation, because they may have had no sense whatsoever that was anything hurtful or odd at all, and I think too, to when you listen to that person, especially if it's somebody that a lot of times we have these conflicts that aren't really conflicts, but they really aren't. They're just a misunderstanding. But other times we have conflicts with somebody that's really a conflict. And things have been said, hurtful things back and forth, and we both acted wrong. And now we're trying to get together and get that straight. And one thing I think that really helps is to pray together, hold hands if that makes, a lot of times that'll give you an emotional closeness.
Yeah.
As you said, Alison, sometimes the things you say are not what you thought you might say, but acknowledging you both are sinful and that you want to get back into a good relationship, but really listen to what the other person says, what her viewpoint is, and even reflecting that. Well, I'm understanding that you feel like this, and yes, and so forth. And I think that really can help a lot. I've also told people, if I were in this situation, I would want somebody to come to me. And so I'm coming to you like I'm doing what golden rule I'm doing to you. I would want somebody to do to me. If they saw me doing X, whatever, and then just said, well, oh, she was wrong, and then never said anything to me, there I am, so, just to emphasize that to somebody. And also the thing I would say to anybody who's been offended and has been sinned against, there's no perfect time. There's no perfect words. There's no perfect way. Just do it. But the longer it sits, the harder it is to address it.
Oh, that's
Can I just add a little thing to the end of that, Ila, because it played straight into something that I've been wanting to say, and that is, here's a coping mechanism of mine that may be very useful to our listeners. The second someone says something that hurts me, I ask a question right there. Or like, wait, I think I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. Do you mean this or that? Or I need resolution like right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but I'm just suggesting, if the second someone says something, get your clarity, girl. You don't have to like live with that for 3 days and get up the courage and then go to them and be like, okay, remember that conversation back there? Because then they know that there's all this history. Like most of the time they didn't mean to say what you thought you heard. Right. So just like, let's do this in our conversations. It's very preventative. Like, I don't think you mean this. It sounds that way. You probably don't. Using the body language of lightheartedness and be like, help me understand what you just said. I think I might be misunderstanding that. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And so right in our conversations, I think that's hopefully useful.
I love that comment we got. I may have misunderstood when you said.
Yeah.
I love that. I love, that's just really, Ephesians 4 verses 2 and 3 says, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Eager. This is your priority, is to maintain the unity in the bond of peace. That is your priority. And if you're saying, well, you did this and you're trying to hurt the other person, or it's your ego, you want to feel good about yourself and put somebody down, that's not eager to maintain the unity. It just like that needs to be your priority.
Right.
And this going to the other person first and going to them alone, that Matthew passage, we know that. And the way that I know that is because if you hear someone is talking about you behind your back or has a problem with you, what is the first thing you say? You say, why didn't you come to me? Yeah. Right? So when it's flipped this way, we're all about coming to each other, right? But when it's flipped the other way and we have anxiety about going to that person, we don't want to do it. But like I said before, I always want the opportunity to either defend myself or apologize, or make it right. It's really important, rather than to just let that bitterness go to seed, because they will. Wow. Absolutely great comments. I'm super thrilled. I think to wrap things up tonight, unless you guys have anything else you want to say.
The only other thing, I always think about what my dad used to say when somebody comes to you and criticizes you or tells you you've done something wrong. First thing is it true? And you consider that first. and rather than immediately rushing to defend yourself, we often, that's our first step, is to defend, but we need to really think about, are they right? Is that how I've presented myself? Have I offhandedly said something? Sometimes with our friends, we'll tease a little too much and it'll go over a line that we didn't realize till we crossed it, And I think it's really important. And when someone comes to you, that you seriously consider what they say. If you're wrong, like you said, change or apologize and change, But we have to be ready for that to happen.
Yes, thank you for adding that. I had skipped the how to receive criticism. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's tough, and
hard.
A lot of times our first initial reaction is to attack that person and say, "Well, you did," and that doesn't solve anything. And like she said, is it true? Did I do that? And sometimes I know with my divas, sometimes I will say, I don't think that you meant for it to come across this way, but when you said this, the optics of this are not good. So you need to it may not have been your intent, but the way that it looked, I want you to think about the way that it looked to other people. And they're like, oh yeah, of course. No, I certainly didn't mean that. Right. But you still get your point across.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
again, what's your outcome? Your outcome, Alison, is to train those young ladies, to teach them how to behave and to train them to do it, not to make sure they know that that they were wrong. So focus on your outcome as you speak to somebody. That's a good point.
Man, I just feel like I'm going to need to watch this like once a month, maybe once a week, like watch it back each time. And I do want to say as we wrap up that I feel like, especially the isolation that our society has had over the last year and a half, we've just gotten used to not speaking face to face. And there are things that you will say online or in a text that you would never say in person. If you were looking at it, you just wouldn't do it. And we've just become a little more harsh and curt, I think, as a society. And it's so important to remember this, eager to maintain unity as long as it is for, possible with you, live peaceable with all. And we're like, sometimes you just see, wow, but it's important to know that, if you're letting that bitterness and anger set up in yourself, that the keys to that cage are on the inside with you.
Yeah.
And it's only you that can let yourself out if you're letting yourself get that upset. And remember that what God said, you need to go to that person. Yeah. So it may make you anxious, but hopefully you've learned a little bit and we'll all be ready, maybe let quite a few more things go than we thought, but also to go in love and be peacemakers. Yes.
Yes, very good. That's exactly.
Amen, sister. Psalms 133:1 says, how good and pleasant it is when brothers live together in unity. And I just want to say, sisters, let's aim to give that all we've got. I know it takes some nervousness sometimes. It takes some looking the other way sometimes. And it takes, some courage to go to people. And I just want to say, good job for loving people enough to take a chance on saying something that could better them. So well done, all the ladies that have had the courage to do that. And well done, Alison. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Ila. So good.
Thank you so much to our viewers for your comments. It really helped us with the conversation, and we appreciate even anybody watching this, whether now or later. Please add some comments, because we all see those and they really are helpful to everybody as we're teaching one another. Thank you again Alison, for preparing this discussion for us. It was great. I enjoyed it. I know Cindy did. So it's really great for us to do this. Next week, I'm going to bring a lesson on the blessings and burdens of caregiving. It's something that has been on my mind lately, and one that I wanted to bring a lesson about it, and would really hope that you'll be able to tune in and to add some comments, because certainly I don't know all there is to know. I don't know that any individual person does, but we want to try to bring the Bible perspective of what God wants us to know about caregiving. And there are blessings and there are burdens as well. And one thing about it, we are all being given care by God. God is our caregiver. And at some point or another, we will all be we have given care, or we will give care to another person. And I hope that I can bring a Bible perspective on the blessings. And then, of course, there are burdens, and hopefully a God's perspective on how we can handle the burdens that come with it. So that's next week, Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern. And Lord willing, I'll be out in Texas and coming to you from the Lone Star State. So
Right.
yeah. On Tuesday, don't forget to watch Tuesday evening. The men on Answering Religious Error are bringing lessons about keeping my head on straight, and they're bringing some great lessons for men and for women about how we can continue to serve God faithfully. Wednesday, they answer questions at noon, and it's a live Bible Q&A. I think 6 of them this week, wasn't it? Didn't I see there were 6 guys answering questions, and they're questions that have already been submitted and questions that are submitted on, as they go. So be sure to tune in for those, and we shall see you next week.
Yep.
Good night.